the place of bondage and brought out the ransom and redeemed. He went in himself as a corn of wheat that had to be planted. He was the firstborn of many that came out. And Ephesians chapter 4 says he led captivity captive. Can you see that? Now, it's interesting, the pictures being painted here is that even though Jacob at present doesn't have wife or children, the pictures here of Jacob stroke Messiah battling with the serpent, and Jacob Messiah going down, as I said, into the fortress or citadel of Satan, leading that company of redeemed. That's what Padan Aram means. Are you hearing me? He leads his bride from captivity he leads them to liberty, also known as the Yovel or Jubilee. Now, the word Padan Aram, we need to look at the gematria, the numerical value of it, and it happens that it is strong. The numerical value is 375. That word is asah. It's a Hebrew word which means to make or to do, to labor, to form a contract, but it's also the same root word as Esau, which means, I like this, the shaggy, hairy one. Are you with me? Well, Esau was also known as Mount Seir. And Mount Seir was connected with, if you go back, how many of y'all remember Greek mythology when it talks about this goat monster, half man, half goat? Well, that's where that comes from. And the connection there is to this goat, this shaggy goat that's led off out into the wilderness that has the sins of the people and has to be judged. Are you following me? So there's a connection. Well, you can see this connection again here by virtue of the numerical value of this word Padan Aram. Those who remain in Padan Aram and who are not led free by Messiah have formed a contract with the hairy one, also known as Ha-Satan. Incidentally, this place was also known as Syria, indicating that perhaps the hairy one, a future Esau, stroke anti-Messiah, the one who will exalt the fortress or palace of Satan and attempt to enslave all Israel, will come from here. Did you hear me? When he leaves there, he goes to a place called Luz, more familiarly known as Bethel. However, if you look in the Hebrew, Jacob calls it the place. And it's not an accident that the transition begins to take place when he leaves Beersheba. But there's a natural transition that begins to take place at this place called Bethel, also known as Luz. Let's read 28:19 of Genesis. Genesis 28:19. And he, Jacob, called the name of that place. He called the name that place Bethel. Did you hear me? The King James English messes you up. It sounds like he's calling the place Bethel, but he's talking about the place, and the place being Bethel. The place is a name here. The place is a title. You can't see it in the King James English. I hope you're in the place. You need to long to be in the place. Are you hearing me? But the name of that city prior to being called Bethel was called Luz. Now, the wording of this particular sentence, as I just said, brought some confusion. I want to look at it. In the Hebrew, you see it. Are y'all seeing this? Shem ha-makum. Do y'all see that in the Hebrew? Et Shem makum, the name of the place, makum. Now, if you scroll up a little, well, I'm not sure if yeah, here it is. If you notice, you have the hyphen between the Aleph and Tav, Shem, and the hyphen between the Shem and Ha-Makum. Well, the hyphen means that these two words are connected and these two words are connected. So this is supposed to all go together. So what it's saying here is thus, the Aleph and Tav, Shem. Well, the Shem is Makum. Makum is 4725, and that is called the sanctuary or the place. Jacob knew where he was at. He intentionally stopped there. He says, this is the place. In Hebrew said, this is the sanctuary. This is the holiest of holies. This was where Abraham had offered Isaac. Well, the gematria of the word makum, 4725, mem, kuf, vav, and mem is 186. The same as the words that you see in Isaiah 8:14, where it talks about Yeshua being called the sanctuary. It says that he was the sanctuary and that he would become a stone of stumbling. Are you with me? Now, in the Hebrew, stone of stumbling is Eben. Can y'all see it? Nakaf. Nagaf. Can y'all see it? Eben Nagaf. The same verse here that declares Yeshua is the sanctuary, in this instance, it's called the Mikdash. Makum is 4725. Mikdash or Mikdash are out of the holy place, the sanctuary. They're the same, synonymous. 4720. Well, a Mikdash is a cognate or relation to Makum. Jacob could have been describing the place this way. This is the sanctuary of the Aleph and Tav, or he could have been talking about a specific place, or he could have been speaking about a specific person because he sees this person. He could have been saying, this is the sanctuary, the Aleph and Tav, talking about Messiah. Messiah is the sanctuary. That's what Isaiah 8:14 says. And he's the very one that becomes the stone of stumbling. Are y'all getting any of this? Hallelujah. Now, Luz, I'm firmly convinced, and we had a little bit of a disagreement earlier this week with another guy that was talking about it, and he was saying, well, Luz and Bethel could not have been at Sinai. Well, I beg to differ. I believe that Luz and this place, Bethel, because he calls it Bethel, inferring that the sanctuary is the house of Yahweh. The place that was named Bethel, if you go back and look at it, is actually to the west of this location. And the enemy, in his acts of disinformation, has scattered Bethel and some other, like the Mount Sinai, over where the Roman church says Sinai is. So there's been some disinformation. I personally believe that Luz and this place here that he's referring to as the sanctuary, the house of Yahweh, was right there at Mount Sinai. The reason I believe that is because Mount Sinai today is referred to as Jebel al-Laws, and of course everybody says that's because it's called the mountain of the law. No, it's the mountain of the Luz, and Luz is the Hebrew word for almonds. It's an almond tree. And the word Luz can also mean bone, as in the Luz bone is supposed to be at the very base of your skull, and the rabbis teach that the Luz bone is indestructible. It is the seed of your body. Seed, S-E-E-D, of your physical body. That if you lay down, even if you're incinerated, this Luz bone remains, and so there's a seed for resurrection. It could also infer that the Luz bone is the spine. Hold on to your seat now. So where is Jacob? Jacob's laid out on the ground at this place called Luz. He's in the Makum. He's in the sanctuary. He's in the Mikdash, Mikadosh. He's in the middle of the holy place. And he's laid out on the ground. What he's doing is reenacting what Adam did in Genesis chapter 2 when Adam's laid on the ground and the bride's taken out of him. Fast forward, you see his own father laid out on an altar while his grandfather Abraham's about to offer him as a sacrifice. Go skip over Jacob to the Messiah, and the Messiah's laid out on the earth. That shadow picture is seen from one portion of the Torah to the next, and what it's telling us is that the entire land, not just Israel proper, the little small place that we look at today, that entire area that extends from the Mideast down into Africa was laid out in the form of a man. Now, why would I say that? Let me ask you this. Do you remember what Jacob sees? He sees a ladder. Am I correct? And we've talked before that we believe the ladder was a picture of the DNA helix. Am I right? Well, this also was known, if you go back and look, and I don't have the verse on my mind right now because I didn't have it in my notes, but it's also referred to as Rephidim, this location, right? Rephidim in this place is translated or defined as balustrades. How many of you have ever built a stairway? Do you know what balusters are? They're banisters in a railing. Could also be the railings of a ladder. So why wouldn't Sinai and Horeb be called as the place of the balustrades, the place of the banisters, the place where the ladder was? Isn't that powerful? Now, let's look a little further. Joshua chapter 16, verse 2 also gives you some insight that Bethel and Luz were two distinct places. What you find again is a picture of Jacob who's laid out upon the earth, and he literally reenacts what is going to happen to his descendants, and ultimately the epitome of his descendants, and that was Messiah. In conclusion, Jacob also, I believe we could refer to him as Messiah here by his actions, leaves the well, the source of the oath of the covenant. He carries in him the seed of the redeemed. He defeats the serpent who seeks to destroy his family, nation, and kingdom, leading those who were held in the fortress of the hairy, shaggy one, those who were previously, listen to me, where does he go? He goes to meet Laban. Those that were previously white. Laban means white, but it's usually associated with leprosy. Wow. He leads those that had been previously spotted with leprosy to their jubilee freedom, making them truly without spot or blemish, white with righteousness. Hope you've enjoyed this teaching. Thank you for listening. Shalom Aleichem.